here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. because we want to grow you as a defender.
The defender seeks the challenge of standing up for what's morally and ethically right, and is willing to step forward and put themselves in harm's way because they believe that sacrifice and love is the way to do things.
And what we mean by that is that you can grow as a good shooter, but what we're really here for is to help you grow personally as a defender. We know that personal growth and shooting growth go hand in hand, and we want to work to help you become better people in your lives, in your everyday lives, and that's going to translate to your shooting on the range. So that's what we're here for. Hello, everyone. It is the day before Thanksgiving, and we are live tonight on Defenders Live. I am your host, Lora Thorson, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. We would love to hear from you, so tell me where you're watching from tonight. If you're new or you're watching on the replay, welcome. We're happy to have you here. We've got a lot to get through tonight, so let's get started here as soon as we can. First of all, though, I want to wish everyone a happy early Thanksgiving. And I want to let you know how grateful I am for all of you guys that watch, especially my diehards out there, my diehard viewers. You know who you are. I haven't been doing this very long, just since July, and I've got some people that come every single Wednesday. I can know that they'll be tuned in and watch, and I just want you to know how grateful I am for each and every one of you. I still remember back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, when we were on the Zoom calls, and I remember still being able to see all your beautiful faces on the screen. And I remember specifically one night when Tori was in his 18-wheeler going down the road, and I could see that he was tuned in on the Zoom call that night, and that was really cool. So Tori, I hope that you're watching again tonight, but I do have some really fond memories of some of you guys, and I hope that you'll continue to join in. And I hope you're getting a lot out of these broadcasts. So be sure, since I can't see your beautiful faces anymore, be sure to comment. Use that comment section so that I can see who's watching and shout out where you're watching from tonight. I see we've got someone from Oregon here tonight. Oh, and Tori is on tonight. That's great. And he says he's in Alabama, so that's great. And we've got some people from Arizona watching, and I'm sure there'll be some Montanans joining soon as well. So we have a special episode for you tonight, and you want to stay tuned till the very end. So if you have any questions in the broadcast tonight, feel free to drop those in as we go. And as always, Adam Winch is in the background running lots of the things behind the scenes. I don't know if he'll be popping in during the live. You never know. It's random, but he is behind the scenes tonight. If you want to learn more about Defenders USA or about me or Adam, the founder of Defenders USA, go to defenders-usa.com and go to the About page, and you'll be able to learn more about me, Adam, and all of the Defenders instructors. I see we've got more people shouting out. So we've got Catherine here from Michigan, who's one of my diehards that always tunes in. I appreciate you, Catherine. Dawn from South Carolina, and Ross from Kansas. Welcome. That's awesome. All right. So our sponsor for this week's live is Haven Defense Company. So I will be running that promo here. Be sure to check out Haven Defense Company. Britt Hickman and his family own this top-notch holster company in Colorado. All of his products are made in the USA, and their customer service is unbeatable. Don't take my word for it. Check it out on his website yourself. Brent makes sure each holster that leaves his shop is the very best holster he can deliver for you. He's my go-to guy for all things concealment. For 10% off any holster, go to havendefenseco.com and use promo code DEFENDERS at checkout. All right. Thank you once again to Brent Hickman and family from Haven Defense Company. We so appreciate everything you do for Defenders Live. So we have an interesting show tonight. We have a special guest on, Riley Bowman. If anybody knows Riley, shout out in the comments. Say hey to Riley. He'll be on here soon. But before we get started with Riley, I have a rather special, somewhat lengthy tidbit for the week to share. And so I just want to tell you that in advance so you can get a little bit comfortable. Maybe go grab a pen and paper and have a seat and sit back and relax. I want to tell you what my tidbit of the week is. So I have a little presentation here. Surprise! Um, so tonight, what I want to talk about are 4 ways to set yourself up for success, especially after you've fallen off the horse. Because, it's a timely broadcast, actually. Are we getting ready to get into the holiday season? Do you think anybody watching this broadcast might fall off the horse from now until the first of the year? Maybe. I don't know. So this might be a broadcast you might want to watch a little bit later, go back to, and take some notes on. So 4 ways to set yourself up for success. And of course, as always, you guys know me. I got to have a horse reference in there somewhere, right? Sorry, that's just me. So that's actually a guy getting bucked off a horse, in case you can't tell what that is. So 4 ways to set yourself up for success, especially after you've fallen off the horse. Now, really, guys, what I want to do tonight is I really just want to encourage you. I want to encourage you because some of the episodes we've had on in the past have been maybe a little bit heavy, maybe a little bit deep here and there, right? And maybe this year has been kind of tough for some of us, right? So I want to do my best to encourage you. And also, I've fallen off the horse many times, many, many times. And one thing I'm proud of is that I always end up getting back on the horse and I keep riding. And, sometimes I'm a stubborn woman about that. I do that in my own time. You can ask my husband. I'm ready to get on the horse when I'm dang well ready to get back on the horse, but I always get back on. So I just want to share with you some tips that I've learned that have helped me along my journey. And I hope they'll help you as well. So all of us are going to, if we haven't already, fallen off the horse. And we may lie to ourselves and say that we got bucked off, but the truth is we probably just fell off the horse. So don't tell anybody, right? But you know what? Falling off the horse could be many things in your life. It could be your health. It could be your fitness, maybe your dry fire routine. It could be relationships in your life, your business, maybe your finances. Guys, this could relate to literally anything. So I want you to think about that as we go through this tonight. Think about what is your proverbial horse that you have fallen off of, or you're currently on the ground looking back up at, that you need to get back on the horse. So whatever it is, you need to learn how to get back on track. And that's so important, right? So let's see. Let's just get right into it. So, the first way to set yourself up for success is to realize that action creates inspiration, not the other way around. Now, how many times have you heard about or thought about, well, I watched this thing and it was really inspiring and that wants I just want to get into action now. Well, I'm not saying that can't happen, but more times than not, trying to um just think your way into getting something done or having success doesn't really work. Mindset is important, but you have to put yourself into action. So don't wait to be inspired. Create inspiration through action. And this is backwards of a lot of the times what I've heard and what I've seen. So I thought this was interesting and it really resonated with me. So that's why I'm sharing it with you. So the idea is that small action creates a snowball effect. And many of the examples I'm going to use tonight have to do with fitness, but just keep in mind they can apply to anything. So keep an open mind and think about where you can apply these in your life. So the example that I wanted to give you is that whenever I feel uninspired to work out, I can't wish my way into doing it. I have to just get up and start doing something. Start small. Tell yourself, just move, just do something, do anything. Anything at first is better than nothing. So I just want to ask you something. Have you ever seen someone that got done with a workout and they said to themselves, I wish I wouldn't have accomplished that? That just wasn't a good idea. Like, why did I even do that? No, most of the time when you get done with a workout, you feel really good that you accomplished something that was hard. Maybe it is cleaning or cleaning out a closet, clutter. Maybe that can be literal or figurative. It could be cleaning out clutter in your life. Maybe there's some things that are bogging you down that you need to get rid of. Have you ever looked back and thought, well, why did I even put that off? That wasn't that big of a deal. Like, I made that bigger in my head than it really actually was. If you would have just gotten into action and taken one little step in the right direction, it would have been a lot easier. But we build things up in our head and think it's harder than it really is, when really all you need to do is just take that one little first step. So action creates inspiration, so get moving. Okay, number 2, cut out distractions and create guardrails. Okay, cut out distractions and create guardrails. What do I mean by that? What do you think the answer to this question is? How many times a day on average are we interrupted by our phones? I saw this recently and I couldn't believe it. Like, I know I get interrupted a lot in a day. I have a phone. Everybody does. I also have children. So I'm sure this number is at least doubled, but I was still shocked. So tell me in the comments, how many times on average in a day do you think that we're interrupted by our phones? Anybody out there want to speculate as to how many times a day on average that would be? All right, so the answer is 85 times a day. Are you surprised to know that? 85 times a day on average, you're interrupted or distracted, I should say, by your phone. So tell me, what else in your life is distracting you besides your phone? I mean, your phone's probably a big one, but there's probably other things in your life that you could minimize or eliminate as distracting you from your focus of your intention of your everyday goals, right? Okay. So the next thing is setting guardrails. So establish guardrails to make it easier to stay on track and stay focused. So think about this. How have you set yourself up to succeed in the past? Surely you have done well in the past at something, right? You've succeeded at something in the past. So analyze how you did that. So for me, what I did was I went back to a time in my life when I was in the best shape of my life. We all have those stories, right? Man, I was in the best shape of my life. Well, how did I set myself up for success to do that? So I went back and I analyzed it. And one of the things that I did was I got good coaching in the beginning. I had a coach for the first month, and that person set me on a good plan, set me on a good path, provided accountability for me. And I realized not everybody can get a coach or don't want to get a coach, but that was a good step in the right direction to kind of get me going on the straight and narrow. But I have created 3 rules looking back of the guardrails and not involving the coach. This was after the coach that helped me stay on track. Okay. So rule number 1 was start small and snowball. So when you're first starting, if you start small and snowball, this really helps. And this ties back to the action creates inspiration, right? So if you don't start small, you will try to eat the entire elephant all in one bite and you will burn out. Trust me, I know. I know from experience. I have a tendency to do this, okay? So, let's see. Start small and try not to eat the elephant all in one bite or you will burn out fast, okay? And it's hard for some of us to start small because we want to go big, but it's so much more important to make small, consistent progress than it is to go hard, too hard, and then not stay consistent. So the small steps of consistency are what is key. And that is so hard to do sometimes, but that is so, so important. Okay, so let me find the next one here. Sorry, I'm not used to doing presentations on here, but okay, so rule number 2 that worked well for me in establishing guardrails was work hard at your level and you will level up quickly. Okay, so this one is a little bit hard for people to understand, but this worked well for me. Maybe you don't agree with this, but this worked well for me. So, what I would do was when I would go into the gym, I would work on what was hard for me that day. So you know how some days you have days where you're like totally on fire and you like can conquer the world, and other days it's all you can do to just drag your butt in there, and like you have like almost zero motivation to do anything. Like everything is hard. You feel like you're walking through mud the whole workout. So for me, instead of first of all comparing myself to the other person that was in the gym that was doing well or where I wanted to be, instead of comparing myself to that person, or instead of thinking about what I did yesterday and, oh, well, I did this last week, so I have to do more now, I would focus on what is it that I'm working on today? How do I feel about what I can get accomplished? And I would do what was hard for me that day. I would do whatever my hard was, and then I would push that just a little bit further. So my goal was to do what was hard for me, do my hard, and push a little bit further that day. And if the next day or the next week or whatever I was totally on fire, I would get way down the line, and I would push a little bit harder every time. Just to get past that comfort zone into that suck factor just a little bit, and stay there for just a little bit, no matter what that was that particular day. And that's different for you every day. So instead of comparing yourself to other people, compare yourself to yourself, like focus on yourself. And the more you do that and stay in your lane and knowing yourself really well, the better off you're going to be in the long term, because you're naturally, without even thinking about it, and maybe this is more of the focus on the process and not the outcome thing that we always talk about. If you stay in your lane and you focus on you, you will level up naturally. You won't even have to think about the other guys, because you'll automatically be doing that. Anyway, hopefully that made sense. Okay. So, and here's the other thing that it did for me too, was that so what it did was it allowed me to give myself some grace on those really hard days rather than not showing up at all. So this is really important. So on the really hard days, instead of just what would really be easy would just be to give up and quit, because maybe I wanted to do X number of reps every single day for this number of weeks or whatever. It would give myself some grace on the really hard days, rather than not showing up at all. At least I showed up and did something, right? It kept me in the game rather than giving me an excuse to quit, because what I was wanting to do was way too much, if that makes sense. So then on the days I really felt good, I was on fire. If you really think about it, it all kind of averaged out. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so the next slide. Rule number 3. Don't negotiate with yourself, period. This really helped me. So when I was doing this routine of mine, that was when I had my regular job. I was employed with a company, and I was in an office setting. And I only had a short little window of time to work out. And that was during my lunch hour. And it was a short little bit of time, because if I wanted to eat and work out, I had to really hustle, right? So, but what it did for me was it gave me few options. I either got out of the office, which I really wanted to do, and it gave me a place to go and look forward to, or I had to just stay in the office and eat my lunch there. And I didn't want to do that. So I always had a place to go, and I looked forward to it. But I didn't negotiate with myself. I knew at this particular time, whatever it was, 11:30, I was out the door, man, and I looked forward to it. I was out the door and I was doing my thing every single day. And there was no negotiating. It was just what I did. And when you cut that negotiating out of your life to procrastinate and be like, well, I'm not going to do it today, but tomorrow I'll do twice as much, or I'll wait till after work and then I'll do it. Well, guys, we all know how that works, right? It doesn't. So if you stop negotiating with yourself, or even and set those guardrails in place so that that's not even an option, that will really, really help. And that's just from my experience, something that's helped me. So maybe it'll help you. Okay. So maybe that's blocking time out of your schedule, or maybe it's creating a space in your home that you look forward to going to. For me, if I'm listening to my favorite podcast or my favorite music or something, that makes it so I look forward to it and it turns into me time. Okay. So next thing for helping be successful is to be careful of who you give your time and energy to. Be careful of your time and energy. So this relates again to anything you want to be successful in, whether it's business or shooting or hobbies or whatever. Here's another in the comments shout out. Does anybody know who said this? You become an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Is there anybody out there that knows who said that? I wish I had a prize to give away for the right answer. So think about who you're spending your time and energy with. I'm going to see if anybody gives me the right answer here. But think about who you're spending your time and energy with. Are you setting healthy boundaries in your personal and business relationships? Be honest with yourself. Are you really? Don't allow others to suck your time and energy. You have very little time in the day. Well, we all have the same amount, I suppose. But what you do with that time is you're in control of that, nobody else. So you need to take control of that and be very intentional about it. Value yourself enough to walk away from toxic people and toxic situations in your life, and understand the value of and the power of saying no when you need to, and mean it and follow through with it. I know some people that are yes people. I'm not saying that sometimes you shouldn't be a yes person, because a lot of the time, and I'm going to ask Riley this later, a lot of the time saying yes gives way to really great opportunities in your life. You don't always want to say no to everything, right? But when you're getting taken advantage of, or when you know when the boundary's being crossed, and only you know that, then Abe Lincoln, I'm sorry. Oh, I see. Sometimes I shouldn't read the comments. Anyway, so okay, I got off track there. But understand the value and power of saying no when you need to. You guys know that. There's a difference between knowing it and applying it. So you need to practice that. And that's a lesson that I learned in my life. And it's only been probably in the last 3 to 5 years I've actually been able to apply it very well. Okay. So anyway, I don't know. Nobody's even saying who said that. That's okay. But Chris, that was a great guess. Whoops. Oh, anyway. Okay, so the person that said that was author John Rohn, who is an entrepreneur and author. John Rohn, Rohn, if you want to look him up. Okay, and so let me get on with the last way to set yourself up for success, to get back on the horse. This one is the most important, guys. And this one is be willing to start over and try again as many times as it takes. Okay? When you fall off of the horse, and you will, what will you do next? This is what matters. So when you're at that point where you are just spent, when you're tanked, you're dying to give up, that's when you make a pivotal decision. That's where you find out if you really have the heart and the drive to get back up. It's not when things are good and easy and comfortable. It's when things suck, right? So, what are you going to choose? Most people show their true colors in this moment. So, I want to encourage you to build that mental toughness now. If you're truly serious about training, and I know you are because you're watching this show, to save your life or the life of others, you must learn so much more than just the hard skills of shooting. So, ask yourself this. Sorry, I'm still trying to figure out these slides. Ask yourself this. How will you know what you will do in real life if you allow yourself to give up, slow down, or take it easy in training? Build mental toughness now. So let's go back to training for just a minute. I want you guys to go and watch this. If you have not watched this episode, go back to the August 31st episode with Brian Hill, the complete combatant, and listen to the part where he talks about emotionless correction, okay? This applies to shooting and to life. So he talks about how flogging yourself and beating yourself up does not help in any kind of training, right? So think about a real defensive encounter. In real life, if stuff hits the fan, you won't have time to look back and think to yourself, oh, I missed, dang. Are you going to think like that in real life scenario? No, you're going to have to think and move now. So practice that in your training. Don't look back, look forward and move. And now think about all the things that can apply to in your everyday life. Don't look back, look forward and move. You need to learn how to think and move, not just in shooting, in everything. So whether that applies to gun training, fitness, or your business, don't look back, look forward and move. So in summary, positive action of any type will lead to small wins, which will lead to more inspiration and create a healthy snowball effect. Create consistency and guardrails in your life. Cut out the nonsense and distractions. Create focused intention every single day. Surround yourself with the right people. Value yourself enough to say no when needed. And start over and try again if you have to, as many times as it takes. Practice mental toughness in small ways now so that you can build that over time and most importantly, going into the holiday season, be grateful for the gifts you've been given in your life and work diligently every day to use them for good and to truly build yourself up physically, mentally, and spiritually so that you may be a gift to others as God intended. And that's all I have to say about that. Now, if I can get the slides off of here, I don't know. Okay, guys. So I wasn't able to see all of the comments while I was on the little spiel there. That is really hard to read comments and talk at the same time when I'm like looking at other things. So I apologize, but I'm going to go back and look at the comments afterwards. And as always, shout out in the comments if you have questions as well. Adam's looking at all of those. So if there's something that he needs to be brought to my attention, he will do that. So let's get on to Riley Bowman. Thank you guys for sitting out with me on that little spiel. I felt that was important, but it was so long. I really did feel like it needed some sort of a presentation because it was quite long. So let's get on to Riley Bowman of Concealed Carry. Riley is a firearms instructor, a Master Class USPSA competitive shooter, host of Concealed Carry podcast, and the VP of concealedcarry.com. Now, that is quite a list. Quite a list. And there's even more. Wait, there's more. When I bring him on, you'll be able to hear about everything else. But I want to talk to Riley today about business training and life lessons. So, Riley, I hope that you can come on the screen here. And I don't see you. Are you there? I don't hear him either. Huh. I bet he's trying. I can't hear him. Can you guys that are watching, can you see or hear Riley right now? Tell me in the comments. He's frozen on my screen, Adam. Ruh-roh, Tori says. I can't hear you, Adam. Nope. Oh, there he is.
There we go. Welcome, Riley. And I'll jump out of the screen.
Are you there, Riley? I can't hear you. I still can't hear you. Well, we can see you now, so that's good. Can you do sign language? Can anyone else hear Riley? No sound. That's problematic for an interview.
Are jumping.
Oh, there he is. There he is. I
hear
can
me?
hear you. Can you hear me, Riley?
I hear you fine.
Oh, thank God. Hallelujah. All right. Well, I think we're good to go now. Well, welcome to the show. I hope you didn't mind that long tidbit there in the beginning. Riley, I believe, is at a Thanksgiving get-together, and he had to come in at the last minute, which is why we couldn't do his audio video setup thing. So you're kind of on the fly today, huh?
I am definitely on the fly. I apologize for coming in right at the last minute.
That's okay. That's all right. Well, we can roll with the punches. We're a good group to do that with, so no big deal. So, all right. So I did my best to introduce you, Riley, but I've never met you. I don't know you, so I'm so glad that you're on the show. So go ahead, tell us about your background as a shooter, and as a business person for those that don't know you.
Well, I got into shooting other than like your typical go out in the backyard or on the farm and, shoot type stuff. I got into it more seriously about the time my son was born, my oldest son. At least that sort of began the journey, because for the first time in my life, I realized, oh, I've got, a little person besides me and my wife that I'm now really truly responsible for, that can't do anything of his own accord, and is dependent on me and on my wife. So I started getting a little bit more serious about it at that time. That was 16 years ago now.
Wow.
And then about 12 years ago, I started pursuing becoming an instructor, and mostly just taught like concealed carry classes. Later on, started doing some defensive handgun kind of stuff, and got into law enforcement around that same time as well as a reserve. Did that for 7.5, 8 years, somewhere in that ballpark in Colorado. And then, just pursued all the opportunities I could. Around about 6, 7, 8 years ago is when I really started getting really passionate about training, about trying to take it to the next level for me personally. And so I kind of see my personal progression as like these like little steps, these like there's like a plateau for a while, and then you're like, oh wait, there's more. And so really about 6, 7 years ago is when I really started diving deep, and started training more with other people, I was taking classes from various people more locally, but I guess training with like my first like serious classes with Kyle Lamb. And that was an awesome opportunity, which was 6 or so years ago. And that really kind of opened my eyes to the broader training community. And from there, since then I've trained with all kinds of folks. It's hard to list them all off, but like Chuck Pressburg comes to mind all of a sudden, Matt Little, Rob Latham, Mike Seeklander, Dave Spalding, some of those multiple times. I know I'm missing people. Scott Jedlinski. I've had opportunity to attend blocks with guys like Bill Blowers, or I've even been able to witness folks like Brian Hill teach. Even though I haven't attended one of his classes, but I kind of AI'd for him at the ASP conference. And Chuck Caggart I've done some training with. So I've tried to just get out there and touch a lot of different things. I've taken classes that were competition focused. I've taken classes that were of a defensive focus, and classes that were just purely shooting. I've done low light training and hand-to-hand combatives, and all kinds of things through the years. So that kind of brings me to where about 6 years ago I started getting into competitive shooting, and now that's my hobby, but also something I'm incredibly serious and passionate about. And what I primarily focus on teaching now is shooting, because I want to teach people how to shoot more gooder. Is frank, like, it's what it comes down to. Like, there's so many people out there that can teach tactics classes and defensive this and defensive that. There's so many people that can do that kind of stuff, and frankly can do it better than me. I want to teach people how to shoot and how to run their guns. I want to make that part of their process as simple and as pain-free as possible, because the better you can shoot, the more bandwidth in the brain and everything that you free up to do all the other stuff. So I want to help people be able to accomplish the shooting part as quickly and as easily as possible. Businesses.
Have you found? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You asked me some questions. I'm just trying to make sure I hit all the things.
Oh, we'll hit all the things. Yeah. I put a whole long list of all the businesses, and we're gonna talk about each one of those in a little bit later. But what I was gonna ask you was, as you said that you kind of started just locally, as most people do, you don't realize that there's a big world out there.
Yeah.
Right. And did you notice, as you kept training with more people, that the more you trained, the more you realized how little you knew?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's that way with so many things in life. The more of that rabbit hole you go down, the more you realize, oh, this isn't a rabbit hole. This is a freaking cave that I cannot see the bottom of. My flashlight only goes so far, and I still can't see. I dropped the penny or the pebble, and I'm still waiting to hear the sound of it
But
hitting the
isn't that
bottom.
kind of the exciting part of it, though? That's what I like about it, is like the deeper you go, the wider it gets. I kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think
No, it's so
that's
true.
fun.
Even where I'm at
Definitely.
right now, like it's a weird thing, because I think I've come to grips with I can say I'm a good shooter. Like, it is what it
Probably,
is.
yeah.
Like, I shoot pretty well. I understand a lot of things about that. However, I still feel like I know nothing. And like that's
Well,
such a
you
weird
shouldn't feel like you
thing.
know everything, Riley, because then you have a problem, right?
Yeah,
That's a problem.
so that's the part that keeps you digging and keeps you learning, keeps you
Right.
humble, keeps you
Right.
discovering.
Mhm.
And I've had to come to grips with also the fact that what I think today could change tomorrow. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
weird conundrum of sorts as well, because that might make a person feel like they don't stand on a foundation. If like, well, wait, the things I think I understand today could change tomorrow, well, then what am I like? What am I standing on right now?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact is no, I'm standing on a foundation. I may just not quite fully understand the extent of that foundation. I'm still discovering some things there, and so, um, I've had like recently, I've experimented a bunch with shooting with iron sights more seriously again than I had in a while, and there were some
Mm-hmm.
takeaways from that. There's some things I'm like, okay, what I thought I understood about that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, just got
Mm-hmm.
changed. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's totally okay and totally acceptable, and
Right.
that also gives us breadth of experience and allows us to speak to more things, especially if we're instructors and we're trying to connect with and communicate with students. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
want that breadth of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I think
it's
being challenged by other people that don't, see things maybe the way you see them, I think that's a good thing. When I was talking about being careful about the people in your life, I didn't mean cut out the critics. I didn't mean cut out the people you disagree with. I meant the leeches mostly, the energy suckers. But I think having critics and having people in your life that have alternate ways of looking at things is a good thing. So that helps all of us.
by the way, I
Um,
loved your
yeah.
message. I loved your message.
Oh, thank you.
Especially when you were talking about that, I was thinking about yeah, one of the things I've tried to achieve in my life is try to connect with as many quality people as I can,
Mhm.
and that has blessed my life immensely. And it
Yeah.
has opened doors and afforded opportunities that otherwise wouldn't have been there if I hadn't created those connections with quality individuals. And you're
Right.
exactly right that you do have to have the courage and the ability and the wherewithal to cut out the not so quality folks. And that's hard to do at times, but it's important to do.
Mhm.
So
It
I
really,
really
really is.
appreciated that message.
Well, thank you. Um, so in your experience, because you've been in this business for quite some time, and you've been acquiring other businesses recently, as I understand, what are some of the biggest takeaways and life lessons that you've learned from being in business?
So I started my first business in the construction industry in
Oh.
2005 or 6, started a home
Mhm.
building company. And that lasted a whopping 2 years, because in 2008 is when
Yeah.
everything crashed and burned in a big fashion nationwide. When banks went haywire, and suddenly my construction loans dried up overnight, and I was left with not a whole lot I could do. So I pursued other opportunities for a time, worked for the federal government for a bit, started another construction company in 2011 or 12, thereabouts, and ran that for 4-ish years. So starting businesses, running businesses is nothing, in fact, I knew from an early age, I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I don't jive super well with the classic 8 to 5 working for somebody else type, role in the business world. I like to be the guy that's in charge, or at least kind of set my own course, my own path, my own destiny. And so in 2016, uh, my current business partner, Jacob Paulson, came to me and said, "Hey, I need you to come on board." And so at that time, our business was primarily focused on training. And over the last 6, 7, almost 7 years now, it'll be 7 years in next month. Actually, that's crazy to think. We've that with a lot of that has changed, uh,
Mhm.
and it's pretty remarkable to see how it's changed. And what I can say, so you asked about lessons learned. The first thing that came to mind, and I actually was thinking of this, was you were doing your presentation, was the mantra, and can't remember the authors' names of the book, but there's a book called "Fail Fast, Fail Often," and
Mm.
I really okay. First of all, you should know I'm a perfectionist, and I don't necessarily like to fail.
Me too.
However, I have learned through experience and learned through failure that failure is important. Failure represents learning opportunities. If we don't fail, we don't learn, we don't get better, we don't grow, we don't succeed.
Mhm.
So fail fast and fail often, and don't be afraid of that. Embrace it, in fact. And that there's so many parallels to this whole community, Defenders Live, right? Like whether you're a shooter or you're just defensive minded or whatever it is that whatever brought you here, uh, you need to learn how to be okay with failing. Okay, so whether it's picking up a gun and shooting, and then it doesn't go quite the way you want, well, okay, we need to identify what didn't go well. What was the failure point, and we start addressing it. It's just a absolute essential piece of life, and people struggle with failure. People struggle with the mental aspect of that as well.
I
People
don't
carry
think
a
it's
lot
the
of baggage.
failure so much as the resilience. The bouncing back part is the part that's important, I believe. I don't Yes, I think it's important to fail, but what you do after failure, I think, is more important, don't you?
Absolutely. Well, of course, of course. Uh, and that's kind of the mental side of this, because if you fail and you're just like, well, that sucked, I'm not
Yeah.
doing that again,
I'm
and
out.
it's like that's the wrong attitude.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess if you touch the hot stove, that's probably wise not to do that again. But there's a lot of things. It's like, no, you need to do that again. You need to
Right.
try that again,
Mhm.
and then but in trying again, you're trying to tweak what was it that didn't quite
Right.
work last time, right? And we
Yeah.
keep it's like Thomas Edison, inventing the light bulb. Like he
Mhm.
he he had the idea in his head. He knew what he was trying to achieve, and just needed the right formula, the right filament,
Yep.
the right materials, everything to make that work.
Mhm.
And had to do that a lot of times before it finally worked, in the way that he wanted. And so, yep, it's absolutely about what you do. Like you got to get up, you got to bounce back, and you got to keep moving forward. I am I I was accused of toxic positivity, which is easy to do with me. I'm serious. Like I
I've never heard that before.
I I apologize to anyone that is offended by my toxic positivity, but all I can say is I'm an eternal optimist, and I do not quit, and I do not give up, and no matter what stands in my way, like I will keep, like, even if it's an immovable brick wall and I'm bashing my head against it, if it's my only alternative, my only option, I'm
Right.
going to keep bashing my head against that thing.
Right.
So um that's just how how I live my life. And I remember being like oh gosh, I must have been like a 9 or 10-year-old boy, and I remember reading the poem by Robert Frost, "The Road Less," or the Road Less Taken, right, or "The Road Not Taken."
Or less traveled,
Um,
or no.
less what it, you know what I mean.
I know
So
what
it's
you're
been,
talking about. Yeah.
but the important part, the thing that sticks in my mind, this is the part that I remember, is two roads diverged in a road, and or two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one
Less
less
traveled.
traveled by. Sorry, it's been a long
Yeah.
couple days here. It,
That's okay.
it's that concept. It's that concept of like coming to a path in my life and being like, well, that one looks sunny and green, and look at all the flowers, and there's like music rolling over the hills, and over here it's dark and scary and terrible. And I remember reading that poem and thinking, I'm going to do as much as I can to pursue that darker, scarier, harder looking path. And that has been like what has defined my life in a
Mhm.
lot of respects. If I had always chose to took the easy path, I would not be
Mhm.
where I am today.
Mhm.
And I think that's I think more people need to do that. And it's hard. Like nobody likes to go down that dark, scary path, but like that's what you have to do.
Mhm.
I think. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but my eternal optimist inside of me is like says, it looks terrible, but I promise it's going to get better on the other side,
Get through the hard stuff, and
and it
the
does.
sun will shine on the other side, right?
That's right. That's
I
right. Sorry,
just
looking
think
at
that
some
that
comments here.
really
Great
is.
comments.
I know, right? They're hilarious. I just think that it's more about, I think it's more about walking through fear. I just think that too many people allow fear, whether they know it or not, they allow fear to rule their lives in ways they don't even understand. Like they make decisions based out of fear, And I think that the path that you're talking about is probably doing it anyway. Like, what is the John Wayne quote? Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. I mean, I think there's some truth to that. So, well, let's
There's
move
a
on
different
here.
quote that
I've
came
got
to
a
my mind,
pile of questions
but
for you, Riley, and I don't know how the hour's going by so quickly, but probably because I flapped my jaws for most of it. So I apologize about that. I hope it was valuable. But so I'm really trying to pick out the specific questions that I feel are pertinent here, because I have a ton of them. Let's see here. Because I'm kind of on the business mode here. I want to talk business a little bit, and then I want to talk training a little bit. So that's why I'm kind of going down that whole rabbit hole right now.
hey, and I've got plenty of time, so.
Okay, well, I always worry about taking up too much of the viewers' time as well. But if things are rolling well, we might tip over the hour just a little bit. We'll see. So, okay, you are a Master Class USPSA shooter. Like, that takes some doing. So tell us about the path that you took to get to that, and what are some of the takeaways that people could learn from you? Maybe maybe they're on their own path, their own struggle, right? Everybody starts somewhere. We know that, and that's one of my favorite. I don't even know who said it. I said it. Everybody starts somewhere, and I think whether you're a master class shooter or you're a beginner, there are parallels in those paths, but you're just further down that journey than other people. What can people take away from your path to success to get to that level of shooting?
Well, it requires a lot of work and a lot of consistency, right? Like that's the simple given answer. Like uh,
The
you
non-glamorous hard work. Is that what you're talking about?
it's a
Yeah.
lot of work, and you got to do it consistently. I've been
Mhm.
afforded opportunities to shoot a fair amount. I mean, nobody's paid for me necessarily to shoot. Well, I've got kind of an ammo sponsorship now, which that makes it easier. But I just have had the opportunity to spend a fair amount of time on the range and practicing and shooting. I know from some of the work that we've done at concealedcarry.com, I remember we were doing like a torture test or something once upon a time for some sites from a company that wanted us to test some sites, and the whole goal was to put 10,000 rounds through a gun, in short order, and like test these sites, and so stuff like that where like you're just basically mag dumping, and
Mhm.
it can be challenging to learn it can be challenging to learn valuable things from just like mag dumping over and over and over again. But what I noticed when I would do stuff like that, I'd start picking up on like these little patterns, these little things, that I noticed, like, my sight's doing a certain thing as I adjusted or tweaked my grip. And so actually I I was fortunate in some respects with being able to do some of that, to fortunately be paying attention, because it'd be really easy to mindlessly just bop, 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 bop,
Yeah.
and just run rounds through the gun. And I would try to pay attention. You still needed to get through, I didn't have all the time in the world. We had a certain time frame to get this all done within, but trying to pay attention while I was doing that, and just make use of every opportunity to learn was something I remember trying to do. But so I don't know why I went down that tangent, but you know, I- so I started shooting
Something you learned
three.
from that.
Yeah, I started shooting three gun in 2016. And again, talking about taking the not so easy path. So I jumped into probably the most complicated form of competitive, like action, practical style, you know, competition, by jumping right into one that required proficiency with a handgun, a rifle, and a shotgun. Uh, I don't generally advise that.
You don't recommend that?
I I should have listened to a friend of mine at the time that's like, "Hey, you might consider trying some steel challenge first, and then do a little bit of USPSA, and then you can transition to some three gun or something." That was the logical path, and I was like, "No, but I want to shoot three guns. That sounds like a lot of fun." And so that's what I did. And after a couple of years of here's what I did learn from that. I learned to push myself in terms of speed. And so this is something I do think is helpful in terms of practical pistol shooting, or practical shooting, really. I guess it doesn't have to be with a pistol. Is most people that probably start from what I observe is a lot of people tend to be, this isn't everybody, but a lot of shooters I observe tend to be a bit on the slow side because they're being a little too careful. Well, three gun
Mhm.
encouraged me to throw caution to the wind and just go crazy because it was like, well, put 2 rounds anywhere on that target and it's neutralized and you're good to go. It didn't matter if they were 2 deltas or what, or if you
Mhm.
just clipped the ear, it didn't really matter. Like I got 2 on there, I'm good. And so I learned really fast to go fast.
Mhm.
And that I think has paid some dividends in the long run. However, you have to have the ability to have the discipline to know when and how to dial that back.
Throttle it
And
down,
the
yeah.
last couple of years has been that process for me as I've tried to learn how to strike that right balance because I always tend to try to go faster than I probably should. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that's been helpful because because what the goal here is to always put reasonably accurate hits on target in as little time as possible. So you're always wanting to push the speed envelope to some
Mhm.
extent. 'Cause you want to take as so but if you can do it, then what you want to be starting to pay attention to is what is your gun doing? Like you want to be observing the visual patterns of information that are occurring in front of you as you're pushing that speed. And
Right.
then you start trying to make sense of it. And if you never
That's
push
the
yourself
problem though,
to
is
that
that most
limit,
people, when they push themselves to speed, is they lose their brain. Their brain disengages once the speed starts hitting. This is what I've observed anyway. They can be really focused
yeah,
and intentional when they're going in a slower pace, but then when they start hitting that faster pace, and it's not just physically that they can't handle the recoil, it's mentally that they just start disengaging their brain, and it takes a lot of hard work, especially under stress, to keep your brain engaged and to keep thinking when things are going faster than you want them to go. And I believe that's truly that's a muscle that must be used, and you have to practice that, right?
I agree
To see
100%.
while you're
And I
shooting
think that,
quickly.
yeah, I think you want to give yourself permission to do that in
Yeah.
your private practice, so
Mhm.
that you can start discovering those things before you're like in the position where the stress or the whatever
Mhm.
kicks in, that
Mhm.
makes your mind go blank. uh
Right.
yeah, that is a difficult thing to do, to stay completely
Because
like
for newer
mentally switched
shooters,
on.
shooting fast is enough stress for them to go into kind of a freak out mode, to be honest. For more experienced
Yeah.
shooters, it's just shooting fast. But for newer shooters, that's enough to put them over the edge a lot of the time where they need to dial it back and, re-engage their brain and then and start expanding that comfort zone, so to speak. And you have to
Hmm.
keep building on that comfort zone, I think, until you can keep expanding that out, to that in my
Yeah.
opinion, I think that would be the difference between a newer shooter and a higher end shooter that's been doing it a while. They tend to have that their comfort zone is a lot bigger.
Oh, for sure,
So,
for sure. It's wherever you're at, like whatever you think, like go to, here's what I suggest. Go to the point where you feel like it's just about to start falling apart, and then
mhm,
go just a bit beyond that.
mhm.
Just
That kinda sounds like
a
what I
bit.
was talking about in my
So
little
we want to
spiel
push
about,
ourselves outside our comfort
when
zone just a little
working
bit.
out. That was kinda what I did was I would go to the
Hmm.
threshold of where I was comfortable. That's what I should have said. I went to the threshold of where I was comfortable, and I pushed past it just a little bit. That's
Hmm.
exactly what you're
Yep.
talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely. And then and you just you do that a little bit and start to get the hang of it, and then okay, all right, cool. And then your next range trip or session or whatever, or 15 minutes later, whenever you think's appropriate, push again, and you're just
Mhm.
constantly trying to push that on just a
Right.
little at a time. And like
Right.
that's basically what I would say. I did a lot of that accidentally on my part because I don't think I understood everything that I was doing at the time I was doing it. But
Mhm.
I think I am personally hardwired a little bit to want to go fast. And so I think I was just able to naturally like, okay, let's push that a little bit. Well, I did it this fast last time. Well, let's just go a little bit more this time and see what happens. Whoa, boy, it fell apart. But let's do that again and see,
Yeah.
oh, there's something here, like, and you just
You
start
kind of grow
discovering things
into it,
along the
don't
way.
you, over time? It's kind of a
Absolutely.
growing into it. Yeah. That's cool.
Mhm.
I've never heard it described like that exactly, but that's a good analogy.
Yeah. So, it's a lot of years and thousands of rounds of doing stuff like that. And of course, a lot of dry fire. I started by just like with what everybody does of just doing practice draws, practice draw,
Mhm.
practice draw,
Mhm.
practice draw, a bunch of times. Like you do need to have some proficiency of being able to draw your guns. So that's important to do. But at some point you gotta start expanding what you're doing in dry fire. And so if you want to do some reloads, okay, do some reloads, whatever. Now I
Mhm.
spend most of my time uh, working on the visual aspects of transitions. And so I look around intentionally at things, at objects, at points of focus, and try to get my eye from point A to point B to point C to point D very quickly and very precisely, because I know if I can do that, then my gun's going to arrive where my eye's looking.
That
And that
ties
makes
in with this question right here.
Mhm.
Laura
What do we
says,
got
I
here?
found it difficult. I found it's difficult to transition from standing still and shooting to moving while shooting. What was it that you learned that was helpful to make you more accurate? Just repetition or something more? That ties right into what you're talking about.
Okay. Looks like I lost you a little bit.
Oh, did you hear the question?
I see the question.
Oh,
I knew you were reading it, and then like you cut out on me. That's okay.
sorry.
I'm sure it's on my end more than anything. I'm using my grandma's Wi-Fi, and grandma's and Wi-Fi. That's probably not the best
There's a quotable, Adam. There's a quotable. Uh-oh. We lost him. Unless, what happened? He's using his grandma's Wi-Fi and then he Oh my gosh. Oh, he's back. Are you back?
I think Grandma got mad at him and cut him off.
You
You know,
couldn't have timed that any better, Riley.
I started making fun of my grandma on her Wi-Fi, and I mean,
Oh man, that was
I,
the best. Oh, that was such perfect timing. Okay. All right, let's get back to the question here.
so transitioning from standing still and shooting to moving while shooting. So what was it that you learned that was helpful to make you more accurate? Repetition. Well, repetition is obviously a part of it. So the thing to maintaining accuracy, uh, when we start throwing other variables into the mix, and movement certainly is a major variable, is we have to learn to make it well. This is assuming once we have the fundamentals of like movement down, right? Like it's important to learn how to move your body and hold a
Mhm.
gun and maintain some amount of stability. I mean, it's you're always going to have some instability while you're moving, obviously, because
Sorry, there's another
yeah.
reference to grandma's Wi-Fi. We're not gonna live that down now. Okay. I'm sorry. Go
But
ahead.
you know, is once you got the kind of the basics of can I have reasonable amounts of stability while I'm moving? Because maybe I'm bending my knees a little bit more, dropping my center of gravity, being careful about placing my feet as I'm moving, et cetera, et cetera. Like whatever that is, whatever that looks like. After that point, like what I have found for me is I got to make sure that I keep that shooting process as much as the visual one, that I am absolutely 100% tuned into my sight picture on target. And that this is hard to do because, again, we talked about how difficult it is to stay switched on, especially when we're doing things that are kind of stressful and whatnot. But it's also hard to do because for a lot of people, just all of the visual noise of everything's moving can be so distracting. It's hard to hard to make sense of that sometimes and do what we want to do. But that is ultimately like how I'm able to shoot and move and get pretty accurate hits on target is because I'm so tuned into my sight picture. I'm waiting for that perfect moment each time. It's like, okay, things are moving and now, and things are moving and just like it's purely I'm not sending the shots when I think I want to be sending the shots. I'm sending the shots when I actually see what I need to see to send the shot. And
Could I speak to that for a second, though? Because I
yeah.
actually don't feel the same way. When I'm moving and
Mm.
shooting, I feel like the only way that I can do it really well is I have to take away hyper focus off of the dot or the sights or whatever. And I'm practicing this on my draw stroke too, and it's really helping me. Is I'm actually trying to do the opposite, where I'm looking in front of me, but my vision is opening up peripherally, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
what you do as
yeah.
well?
That's a
Because
really good question.
if I tunnel vision focus on something, especially when I'm moving, then it feels impossible to get where I need it to be. But if I work in a flow mode of my vision widens, my periphery widens
Mm-hmm.
while I'm moving, then I can still do like what you just said. Well, and now, and now, and now. But if I get too focused on it, it's like it doesn't work for me. I don't know if I explained that well enough, but
Yeah. So I no, I make that makes sense to me. That is all about, well, here's the main purpose for the exercise is to help shooters learn how to control their vision more deliberately. And one of the
mhm,
exercises I do is all about, we actually take their peripheral vision and we open it up and we open it up and we open it up and we open it up,
mhm,
all while they're trying to maintain visual convergence, right? Their two eyes are converged on a point on the target. Like their
mhm.
goal is to maintain that visual convergence on target the whole time while I'm telling them to pay attention to more and more things peripherally. And then we
Wow,
bring
that's
it
good.
all around and then I bring it back into the
Yeah,
gun.
yeah,
And so that I think is kind of I think that's part of the key is learning how to become more deliberate in controlling exactly what your eyes are doing. So it's really
that's like
easy for
gun
the
yoga,
human eye
Riley.
to well, I've
It
had
is, like,
people make some similar
I
comments.
just envisioned a new class right there.
Um, you know, it's really easy for the human eye to start saccading about. You understand
Mhm,
visual saccades, where we're just the eye is not really locked in on a specific point. It's kind of like we do it without realizing a lot of times. And a lot of times when people, I think, when they tell me, I have a theory about this. It's hard to always see this because you don't get to actually see exactly what their eyes are doing sometimes. But when people tell me that they're kind of getting lost in the sights or they're, or things are distracting or whatever, like I'm convinced that there's times where shooters, their eyes are saccading about and they're not looking at any one particular thing at one
that
time
makes
and
sense.
locked in on that thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I think some of like this exercise I just described, I think helps people start to sort of like find this zen
zone.
place,
Yeah,
of
mhm,
like I need my eye locked in on this specific point on the target. But
mhm,
meanwhile, I can also see these other things peripherally. And what that I
mhm.
think does is empowers the shooter to pick and choose the things in their visual environment that are important to them and that they need to pay attention to. And I'll
I don't
apply that
think
to
many
say,
shooters do that. Especially the newer shooters. I don't I think that's a little bit
yeah,
more advanced.
yeah. Well, so and that's an interesting
I
thing
think
is I
it kinda
have
has to be learned a little bit. I mean, it's not something I don't think shooters naturally do, especially when they're getting told front sight focus over and over again, you know? I think that and then when they go to the dot, then they're told not to focus on the dot. So, I think that makes it hard
yeah.
sometimes
No,
for them to
I
learn that.
I, I completely agree with you. And that's the thing with that visual exercise I just described is we bring it to say red dot shooting on a pistol, like
Mhm.
we want our eyes locked in on a point on the target and we want to kind of see this red dot thingy peripherally, that it's just sort of there and we're observing it, we're aware of it, we're not really looking at it. And that's the key when I'm shooting on the move, especially with a red dot. I can't be trying to look at the dot because it's doing this. right? It's all over the place. I have to just be point on target and then visually aware of where the dot's located. And that does take some time, takes some learning. But when we go through some of the exercises like what I described, uh, it helps a lot of, I think, start to make sense for folks. I mean, I get maybe not like beginning type shooters in my classes, although I kind of experienced a little bit of that at some of the training conferences I've taught at. But I definitely get shooters of a variety of skill levels, and I see success, with my approach of kind of how I teach the visual piece of shooting across no matter who the shooter is. Really, really basic level shooters and really advanced shooters. I see people benefit from that, no matter who they are. Because the fact is most of us, we all grow up learning to see, and we do it intuitively. We don't think about how we do it. And so when
Right.
somebody actually puts some tools in your basket and say, hey, look, you've not really had to think about how you do this, and now I'm going to ask you to think about how to do that, and here's some tricks of kind of how to do that, then all of a sudden people are like, oh wow, like now I have
Yeah.
so much more control over my vision. And shooting is
Yeah.
so visual. You
Right.
want control over your vision.
Yeah, definitely. That's really powerful stuff. Really good, Riley. I think I'll just do another question or two and then we'll get off here because it's already past the hour and I don't want to take too much time, but it's like, it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this with people. So, this next question is how much does dry fire help with speed and consistency? So, what are your thoughts
So
on dry fire?
yeah, so first of all, dry fire I think is one of the best places to learn speed, especially with the gun manipulation side of it, right? Because in dry fire, we set up our dry fire dojo. We clear our gun. Maybe we use a barrel block to ensure safety with our gun, whatever it is. In other words, dry fire is a safe environment where we're not introducing ammo, we're not shooting anything, so we have permission to push the envelope of speed in dry fire. So that is a perfect time to learn speed. Now, obviously, there's some things that are harder to learn in dry fire as far as like recoil management and tracking sights and things of that nature that we also need to learn to be able to do at speed. But all the manipulation stuff, please, please, please push the envelope in dry fire because that's the perfect place. And
Mhm.
then take it to the range, and like over time, you're going to see your live fire times are going to come down and come down and come down because you're pushing the envelope in dry fire where it's safe and appropriate to do so. What was the second part of that? It was speed and something. Um,
Um, I unstart it. So, Adam, can you find it again? I think it was Chris Brady that asked it.
I was looking too. Um,
There's a lot of
I,
comments, which is so great. I love that. But then we're having trouble finding that one
so I'm
again.
sorry if I didn't quite fully answer the question. Was it speed and accuracy, speed and something? I remember
I
there was two
think it
pieces.
was speed and accuracy, but
Oh, speed and consistency. I found it.
oh, there you go.
Speed and consistency. So consistency. Well, yeah. If I'm like, what's going to develop consistency is doing things thousands and thousands of times, right? So where are we going to get the most efficient repetitions is going to be in dry fire primarily, right? That's where we like probably one of the biggest challenges any developing shooter has to learn or get over is how to grip the gun and how to grip the gun the same way every single
Mhm.
time. Every single time. If you want consistency in how your gun performs during live fire, it all comes down to how consistently you grip the gun. You got to grip it the same way every time. Because as soon as you change your grip ever so slightly,
Mhm.
it's not going to recoil the same. It's going to move maybe higher. Maybe it's going to even maybe you changed your grip in a good way and you didn't realize it, and now it's actually not recoiling as much. And
Yeah.
that can create a challenge for you because you're all of a sudden like, whoa, like my timing is off here or whatever because the gun's back on target so much sooner than stuff like that. So anytime you change anything in your grip, it's going to behave a little differently. And so that's why consistency is so key. So where can we learn that grip consistency? Dry fire. Many, many, many
And
thousands of
Mike is
times.
talking about establishing your grip in the holster. So that's important too.
Well, yeah, of course. Yes. I mean, that is all part of it. Yeah, that's where it
Mhm.
starts, right? That's
Mhm.
this grip that's out here started somewhere else, which was back here or here, wherever you're
Mhm.
carrying that gun. So hitting the gun right from the get-go the same way, super important.
Mhm.
That's why I like discovering or developing index points.
Mhm.
Some people like using the claw grip as they're drawing from, especially like the appendix position, where they're placing the thumb across the back of the slide, like the back plate of the slide of the gun. I actually, even with the guns that don't have a large beaver tail, so I started on my SIG pistols that have a fairly large beaver tail, placing a specific point of my thumb on the corner of the back of the slide, and over time that has become an index point. And
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter the gun, doesn't matter the holster, doesn't matter. Like every time I draw my gun, like that's an index point that I have to
Mhm.
hit. Because if I
Mhm.
don't, I know that my grip's going to be off. And so there's that index point where my fingers wrap around and my middle finger and how it indexes against the trigger guard and against the
Mhm.
front strap of the grip of the gun. All of these things like well, even the trigger finger as far as like where it lands on the frame or on the
Mhm.
slide, stuff like that. So all of these index points help us establish consistency. And that's all developed in dry fire as well.
Now, do you do a lot of micro drills, Riley? What is your thoughts on micro drills?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think that if
Absolutely.
you're especially with your draw stroke, if you're not for me anyway, personally, those micro drills make a huge, huge difference. Could you explain to people what those are and how they can use those effectively? An example maybe?
Well, using the index thing I was just talking about, like how do you establish that? I
But
establish
just
that
doing
in
that.
micro drills
Yeah.
of just placing my hand on the gun. Like, did I hit it the same way? Okay, yep.
Mhm.
Boom. Did I hit it? Yep. Boom. Did I hit it?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. Now let's move to the next step. So, well, let's just go from here to where my hands meet. To just the very moment that this support hand first touches, whether it's my hand, whether it's the gun, wherever that is, let's stop at that
Mhm.
point. Okay,
Mhm.
back to the holster. And not necessarily doing the whole draw stroke at this point, but starting with my
Right.
strong hand already on the gun, right? And then going from that point to where these hands first meet. Okay, back. And then, you're just going back and forth and back and forth. And then you can go from this point to full extension and making sure that the support hand gets locked in the way it needs to and consistently each time. That your sights are, that you're seeing front sight, rear sight, or red dot in the window. So you can go from here to here, from here to here, to here
Mhm.
to here, back and forth, and just micro drilling the heck out of that. Micro drilling reloads, micro drilling malfunction clearances, all of that. If you break it up into all these different little pieces, components, steps, whatever you want to call them, and you can micro drill every little aspect of that. And the more you can micro drill it, the more precise those movements are going to become over time. And
Mhm.
so it's really up to, like, I can give you a bunch of ideas, but it's really up to you, the shooter, the he or she who's practicing, to go
Mhm.
ahead and like, well, what if I did this and just did this one little movement and
Mhm.
like just practice that again and again and again.
Mhm.
Like
I
you
totally
can
agree.
break any of these down into smaller and
Yeah.
smaller bits and pieces.
Yeah, I want all of my students to listen to this, podcast because in all my classes, I've always told them and it's almost like most of them are like, "Really?" Like, they don't understand the importance of go home, unload your gun, get familiar with handling your gun. Like, dry. Everybody's in such a big hurry to get on the range and put lead down range. That's not where it's at, guys. Where it's at is dry. You need to be able to work that gun dry like in your sleep. And you need to know what it feels like and what the draw feels like, every little tiny piece about it. And once you get that down, then go to the range and confirm what you've been working on. And a lot of people don't get that, but that is such a huge, huge part of becoming a good shooter. So thank you for touching on that. I think that it probably would be best. Let's wrap up with I want to talk about your businesses because you have quite a family of businesses now through concealed carry. So talk about that. We've got those websites on the banner too that I think Adam's going to pull up.
Yeah. So we start, actually our when we first started, Jacob and I, 7 years ago, we were known as USAFirearmtraining.com. And not quite a year later, we had the opportunity to purchase concealedcarry.com, which was something that we
Oh,
had
okay.
targeted for some time and wanted to go after that. And so the first business we acquired was kind of concealedcarry.com, because what it was part of that business deal, part of that acquisition. We really just wanted the domain name, but the owners had owned it since like 1998, and they got into the business of making concealed carry vests. Like, one of the owners was a retired cop. He's just this old retired guy, and he's like, I just want to be able to carry concealed with a vest, like that's the most comfortable way to do it. And so that's the business he created. And they were just smart enough, I guess, to go snag the domain name concealedcarry.com back, when it was still
Mm.
available easily, readily. So our deal was we had to continue manufacturing and selling those vests for, I think, up to 2 years or something like that, as part of that acquisition. So we in acquiring concealedcarry.com as a domain, we really were acquiring a business, which was not something we particularly wanted, but that was part of the deal. And even to this day, like, we continue making and selling those vests, even though we don't really talk about it or put it out there, just because we have a pretty loyal subset of our fan base, of our customer base, that they've been customers for a long time and they like their vests and they want their vests, and so we continue to make and sell and service the vest. But concealedcarry.com really then started expanding as a online store. Also a website with blog type articles and information and resources. But ultimately, it was you on the phone call. You said the Walmart of concealed carry stuff.
I know, it just
That's
popped in my
kind of,
head.
you said it, and I'm like, that's true. I mean, like, we want people to go, hey,
I didn't mean it in a
concealed
bad way
carry.
either.
I don't take it that way at all. Um, we want people to be like, concealed carry. I need information. I need legal stuff. I need reciprocity map. I need some training resources, holster, belt, whatever. Like, anything that might be kind of in that space. Like, we just over time started grabbing those little components and those pieces and parts and products and started adding them into the concealedcarry.com website. And so that's kind of how we've gotten to where we are now. And then over time, as sort of opportunities have come up, the first one was Range Tech. I think it was Range Tech was the first one. Yeah, Range Tech shot timers. Some friends of ours started that company and then decided they were going to cancel that whole project. And we said, we think there's value there, so maybe we could do a deal here. And we acquired Range Tech. And then let's see, I'm probably going to get things out of order because it's all just a jumbled mess in my head. But at one point we were like, hey, we should start we were actually doing some business and reselling some trauma kits, and we just started looking at the kits themselves and realizing, I think we could source these components. I mean, cat tourniquets, soft T-wide tourniquets, gauze and gloves and pressure dressings and all, like, I think we could source all this stuff and put together kits and do it at a competitive price. And like, well, let's do that. And so we started Mountain Man Medical, and that's gone really well. Ready Up Gear was something that was started. It's a smaller known brand, not many people are probably familiar with. We actually had different products on concealedcarry.com, and they just didn't really fit anywhere, as far as, like, they were just generically branded. They were concealedcarry.com products. And so we're like, hey, let's create a brand and bring that stuff under that brand to kind of have some homogeny there. And so our ear protection, got over the ear muffs. We've got dummy ammo. We've got little laser, dry fire, cartridge thing you put in your chamber and use with Manus X or with their Laser Academy, or to use with Laser X, the dry fire software. And so we just started adding those kinds of things, like accessories and dry fire products and things like that, into that Ready Up Gear brand. Then we acquired Barrel Block in January of this year. That was pretty exciting. People are pretty familiar with Barrel Block. I think many are. And it's a strong brand with a really great but simple product. And hey, we're thrilled to be able to be the now the owners and sellers of Barrel Block. Definitely recommend using Barrel Block for dry fire training, just for a little extra security and being extra safe. And then we acquired KSG Armory holsters in June of this year. And Gabe had started talking to us. Those of you that knew Gabe knew, he came to us actually more than a year ago with possibility of doing a deal there, and didn't quite happen at that time. But then early this year, I think April or May, he said, "Hey, let's do this again," and so we made the numbers work and did the deal, and we're thrilled to have KSG Armory holsters as part of the concealedcarry.com family now as well, to have a brand that we control, that we sell through our site. Super exciting, and a quality brand at that, so yep,
That's becoming a big family, Riley.
I will say that, I have in real life, I have 5 children, and I have my wife.
I heard.
And that's plenty for me there. And I will say this current family of concealedcarry.com family companies is plenty as well. So no plans to add anything else to the mix right now. I think we're getting the tubes
all right,
tied
but there
on
is one more thing we
concealedcarry.com.
haven't talked about yet. One more thing we haven't talked about, and that's the Concealed Carry podcast. Yes, so you're the man behind the Concealed Carry podcast.
Yeah, we launched that in February of 2016. Yeah, February 2016. I think that's right. It's such a mess in my head.
It's all good.
It'll be 7 years in February since we launched that. So we actually, I went to Jacob. I said, "Hey, man, I think we should start a podcast." And he's like, "Why?" And I was like, "I don't know, because it's a thing." And I listen to podcasts and stuff. I think
it's a thing.
Yeah. And actually what it was is, I remember I was listening to a lot of photography podcasts at the time, because I was kind of getting into photography a fair amount.
Oh man, we could have so many conversations, Riley. I'm a photographer, right? Did you know that?
I've seen that a little bit. Yeah. So I was listening to a bunch of photography podcasts, and I just remember thinking one day, I'm like, "Oh, I wonder what's out there for like concealed carry type podcasts." Like, I just literally searched. I was like, concealed carry in my podcast app, and it brought up one podcast which hadn't published a new episode in like 3 years, and even then had only had like 20 episodes in the first place. And I listened to a couple of them, and I'm like, "Oh, it's not very good." And so that was kind of the genesis. I said, "Hey, there's not really a podcast specific to concealed carry issues, so let's do that." I thought it would be a great opportunity, and it has been a great opportunity, because 7 years later, and like 7 million downloads, and
that's awesome.
700 episodes ish, somewhere in that ballpark anyway, getting close to that number. And a pretty loyal following. Podcasts are a hard thing from like a business standpoint. If you're in a business and you're thinking, maybe this would be a good thing for my business to do, it's very difficult to measure the direct benefit of a podcast to your business. And we knew that going into that, and we still understand that to today. But what I could say is, just purely off of the emails and messages and conversations and people coming up to me at trade shows, it's very apparent that it has had a positive effect on our business, and has helped grow our business. And so it's one of those things. It's like, we've been doing this like 7 years now, and it's there's definitely days where it's like, oh, well, it's getting kind of hard to keep doing this thing.
It's a labor of love, I'm sure. Yeah.
I do enjoy it, but but it is, it's hard, like, what are we gonna talk about this episode? Oh, I don't know. Like, we've kind of talked about all these things, so but we keep doing it and trying to bring quality information and content to our listeners, and it's been great.
Glad. Yeah, we appreciate you. You've been a pleasure to have on, Riley, and I appreciate your time tonight, the day before Thanksgiving. I mean, what a dude to come on and do this for us. We so appreciate it. We are way over the hour though, so I have to cut you short, unfortunately. I apologize for that, but I do so much appreciate your time. Guys, if you guys want to check out Riley, he has all the companies that were listed while he was talking about that. Concealedcarry.com would be where to go. What was the personal website?
LearnTrainShoot.com is where someone can find me for my
for
personal
training.
training and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. So be sure to check all of that out. That's a lot of information in one show, but we sure appreciate your time. And I'm gonna wrap up here for now. So guys, hey, next week I'm just gonna be really honest with you. I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna do next week, but I wasn't quite sure what I was gonna say in my tidbit this week, and I don't think it turned out half bad. So I think that you should just tune in next week and be surprised. And I really, really hope that you got some value and some good information tonight. I certainly did from Riley. He was a wonderful guest. So have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Make sure you spend time with those that you love. Be grateful for all of the blessings in your life. I'm certainly grateful for you. And I will plan on seeing you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Until then,